Okay.
So Daniel says there are certain actions that moral duty obliges us to perform regardless of their consequences. So there are certain things that we have to do regardless of their consequences. However, an action is not morally good simply because it fulfills a moral obligation. So just because it fulfills something, that doesn't make it good. No action can be morally good unless it is performed with the right motivations. Okay, so in order for something to be good, you have to have the right motivations. Harry says our motivations for our actions are not subject to our conscious control. Okay, so our motivate, like we can't control what motivates us. Therefore, the only thing that can be required for an action to be morally good is that it fulfill a moral obligation. So I'm gonna go back up and just make sure I remember what Daniel says, and then I go through each of the answer choices. And if Daniel would say yes, I'm gonna say, would Daniel say yes to this, no to this, or I don't know? And the key here is the ones that I don't know about, because oftentimes the ones that we struggle discerning between are the ones that we don't know actually what someone would say. So, for example, A says no one can be morally required to do something that is impossible to do. What, like, would Daniel say yes, no, or we don't know to that?
You go back through it again.
Yep, just what Daniel would say.
I think he would say no to that.
I feel like he would say I don't know.
Oh, really?
No one can be morally required to do something that is impossible to do. Like, I have no idea. Like, where does it, like, what backup do you have for that? Like, there's certain things that we have to do because of moral duties, but it doesn't say that no one can be morally required to do something that's impossible.
No, I guess that's a good
I feel
point.
like it's very irrelevant, and we get to be that picky on these, so we get to just cross it off without even considering Carrie, which is really nice.
Okay.
And then B says some, so at least one action that are performed with the right motives are not morally good.
I don't think he would agree with that, because he's saying that no action can be morally good unless it's performed with the right motivations.
I feel like he says that in order to be morally good, you have to have the right motivations. But does he say that some actions that are the right motivations are not morally good? I don't think he has an opinion on this either.
I think I'm bringing in too much of my own thoughts for
That's what makes
this.
these questions so hard.
Yeah.
All right. So we actually don't know what he would say on that one either. C says all actions that fulfill moral obligations are performed in order to fulfill moral obligations. Would he say yes or no to that? Or I don't know.
God, I have no idea. I think it's the wording with this one that messes me up.
Right.
But
But it's also weird to be like, I don't know. Because this one, once again, I don't know what he would say. We get lucky on this one. I don't know what he would say to this.
yeah.
So we get to cross it off too. We don't always get this lucky where we get to cross so many off. But people struggle with like the I don't knows. That's the hardest part of these question types.
Yeah.
And then D says an action performed with the wrong motivations cannot be morally good.
I think he explicitly says that in the last sentence.
Yeah, he would say yes to that. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then what about E? What would he say to E?
If a person's motivations for acting are based on a sense of duty, then that person's action is morally good. I think this has the same issue with B in that it conflates the idea of like motivations with morally good.
Yeah, is it like a good on a sense of duty? Is that the same thing as performed with the right motivations? I don't like I there's too big of a jump there.
Yeah.
So actually, this one turns out to be a really easy one, where as long as we can say that Carrie would say no to D, it's going to be our answer.
Okay.
What would Carrie say to an action? So typically you have 2 or 3 and you have to go through them, and you're looking for the one that one person says yes and one says no to.
Okay.
But what would Carrie say to an action performed with the wrong motivations cannot be morally good?
Let me go back through Carrie's. Motivations for actions are not subject to our conscious control. Therefore, the only thing that can be required for an action to be morally good is that it fulfills a moral obligation. So I think Carrie would say that doing, like, it doesn't have to be the
Exactly.
right mindset in order for it to be a good
This is
action.
the only thing that
Yeah.
is required, is that it fulfill a moral obligation. So she doesn't think that you have to have motivation. So she would say no to this.
Mm-hmm.
So our answer would be D.
Okay. That's a tough one. That's a, well, not this particular question, but this format